Here we are on the front of our Grand Design Reflection. We're going to do a walkthrough tutorial just like you would get on the day of delivery, going through the operation of our unit so you have something to refer back to. There is also a deeper dive on some of these components as well as other components if your name brand differs in our Helpful Hacks section on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, do all those awesome things so you can help support the channel and we can continue to do this. On the front of our unit, of course, we have our kingpin. We also have our 7-way plug right here. That 7-way plug is going to transfer all of your lights from your towing vehicle to the fifth wheel on here, as well as our battery charge line that'll pull off the alternator of the vehicle and charge your battery while you're traveling down the road. Last thing you'll have is your brake controller. Once it initiates off the brake pedal, it will send a brake signal through here to the brakes on the trailer. Well, speaking of brakes, we're also going to have our breakaway cable right here. This breakaway cable needs to be fastened to the truck itself, not to the hitch. The reason being is if something ever happens to the hitch, fifth wheel hitch in the bed of the truck, this is going to separate, pull off of the truck. We want that pin to pull out of that breakaway box and activate the brakes on our trailer. Now that can only happen if we have a good 12-volt system on our fifth wheel, meaning that we have a good solid charged battery. If we don't, then that system is not going to activate. We also need to make sure that pin is inserted in that box at all times, otherwise it will be locking up and activating those brakes when you don't want them to. In our front pass-through bay, we have our Furrion solar charge controller. Of course, we have our solar panels up on the roof. This is going to convert our solar power into a charging power for our battery system on our unit. There are a few settings on there in regards to what type of batteries you have, so on and so forth. I'd refer to the owner's manual just to be specific about different types and everything. It's a little bit to go into on that kind of stuff. So just know that all that stuff's in your owner's manual to get a better idea for your solar system. To the right of it, we're going to have our solar prep disconnect. Now what that's going to do is basically just disconnect our solar from our unit. In the event that we don't want to use it for whatever reason, we can go ahead and just shut it off, and that is going to completely disconnect it from our battery system, so it's not going to charge our system or anything. Now that is going to be separate from our actual battery disconnect. So if our battery disconnect is off, then this solar system is on. It's still going to connect to our batteries and charge our batteries off of that solar system, even if our disconnect is off, so no concern there. As far as our actual battery disconnect goes, it literally does what it says. It disconnects the battery from our RV system. We want to use this when we store our unit unplugged so we can conserve the battery power in here. Anytime we have our unit plugged in, whether it's storage or use, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that switch is on. So the converter system, which is our battery charging system, will actually go ahead and charge that battery when we're plugged in. In here, we're going to have some fuses and resettable fuses that are thermal. They're going to automatically reset, so some slide outs and stuff operate off of some of these things. If your slide out stops, the electric ones, then you want to give it about 30 to 60 seconds to kind of cool down and then maybe go operate it again. There's not necessarily a whole lot in here that needs to be maintained. So don't worry about it. That's just where everything is. In the event that you have to go that deep into troubleshooting for 12-volt power, you would come here. We also have a set of fuses and stuff inside the unit we'll go over later. This is our actual converter, that charging system we spoke about. It's going to change our 110 power, which is coming in right here, to 12-volt power going right here out to our battery. That's going to go ahead and keep our batteries charged up. We do see a couple of fuses right here. We can check in the event this system isn't outputting correctly. This is going to operate whenever you're plugged in. If not, it's not going to operate, right? You have a little cooling fan on there, you'll hear operating whenever it is plugged in. Over to the left over there, we do have our inverter prep system. An inverter is going to change 12-volt power to 110 power. In the event we don't have a plug-in, want to operate a couple of small 110 appliances, we can do that. You are pre-wired for that system. And then we're also going to have our LCI leveling system right here. Our main control panel for all that is right above us, and that is where all your jacks and everything are going to go to as far as that system is concerned. We do have a few fuses on there. In the event it's not working, those operate our individual jacks. We do have other videos on our jacks and how it operates. Of course, we're going to go over the operation of this one too. Those will be under our Helpful Hacks section. Now I'll give you a quick turn right here, and we have our actual front individual leveling jacks. These are for our landing gears. On the bottom right here, we do have a little cap. That bottom cap would come off, and in there is our override. We have a 3/8 nut in there. You put that socket on a drill and you can manually run this jack up and down. Now, of course, these are individual, one on each side. Before you do that, you do want to disconnect your 12-volt plugs before you override that system. You only want to do this if you're having an issue with the jack, can't figure it out. You would go ahead and put that in there, and you would just run that drill in forward or reverse, depending on which way you need to operate that jack. Also want to add, with our leveling system, we want to make sure we have at least 6 holes showing on these landing gears. Otherwise, you're going to run out of stroke on these jacks in order to level your unit. So make sure we're using at least 6 holes. We can see them, count them on there, and you won't run into any errors as far as trying to level your system in regards to that. Here we are on the driver's side of our unit. You'll notice in the first compartment we have our propane tank. You're going to have that in the first compartment on both sides, so you have dual propane tanks along with your dual propane regulator, generally located on this side. On that regulator, there is going to be a selector switch. We want to go ahead and use that to select which tank we want to be our primary. The way that works is we have both tanks on, we have our primary selected. It will pull from that tank first. When it empties out, it'll start pulling from that secondary tank without the need to move that switch. Now, your gauge will show red once that primary tank empties out. We want to go ahead and swap it over to that secondary tank if we notice it, and it'll start pulling off of that one primarily, and then we can get our other tank refilled. In our pass-through compartment right here, we have our LCI leveling system. That is controlling our electric jacks in the front and the rear. We'll go over the information on that, as well as the information on our control center right here. So we can see our electronic leveling system right here, made by Lippard. If we kick it on, we can see on our main display right here, we're going to have our battery voltage. Whenever we hit our arrows, it brings us to our auto hitch height. Our auto hitch height is used after we have been camping. Basically, this will bring us back to the point that the trailer was at whenever we disconnected from our hitch on the truck, so you don't have to guess what level it needs to be at. If you want to use that feature, you just hit enter and it will begin to extend those jacks out and put it at the height that it was in before you went into that auto level. Our next one is auto retract all. We would go to that once we are hooked up to the truck. We can hit enter and it will retract all of our jacks. Now, you should definitely double check your fifth wheel hitch and ensure that you are locked in before you do this, because once you pull away, all the weight and everything relies on that fifth wheel hitch at that point. So be sure you're locked in good before you hit that auto retract all. Our next one is auto retract rear. If we want to just bring up the rear jacks and leave the front landing jacks down, we can go through that. And our last one is manual level. Manual level is if we wanted to go in, hit enter, and we can see right here we have our degree marks. Now, 0 is our ultimate goal. That would mean that we're level. We would use these functions right here to raise those jacks. You'll have orange lights that pop up in the corners to let you know that those are indicating the areas where it is low. So if this blinking light on the left hand side is orange, then that means that our left side is low. Same thing on the right, front, and rear. So we would just raise that until that light goes out, and eventually once we hit that 0 mark, our green light in the middle will indicate that we are leveled out. If we need to retract those jacks, we'll just hold down that retract button for just a second. Our red light will come on indicating retract, and we can hit those buttons again and it will retract those jacks. Now, front will run front, rear will run rear, and then if we want to do left or right, it will do those left or right jacks. To take off that retract, you just hold that button down for a second and it will go back. Now, auto retract will once again retract everything. And our next one shows us our stroke on our jacks. So the LF and RF, that's left front and right front. So this is the amount that those jacks are extended out, and they only have so much stroke on them depending on what jacks they are. So if we stroke out, we run out of jack, you will get an error letting you know out of stroke, and that means that we need to put some blocks or get on a more level area that it doesn't have any more jack left to level that system, and it will stop the auto level. Same thing, left rear, right rear for our jacks. Also on this system, right whenever you turn it on, You can get your voltage display on there. And if you want to just operate your front landing gears, you just got to the campground, you're trying to disconnect from your truck, you don't have to go into that manual mode. You can go straight into operation by hitting those front jacks right there, and that will operate the landing gears in the front. Same thing if you want to retract them, hold down that retract for a second, and then it will operate once again just the front landing gears. From that point, you go into your auto level and allow the unit to level out. Now, I want to make sure that we're not moving around in the unit while it is auto leveling. It'll take a few minutes to hit that auto level point. Once it says it's complete, then you're free to go ahead and open up your doors and get inside the unit and start setting everything up. On our control center, we have our satellite cable and auxiliary ports for our coax connections. If we have outdoor satellite, we can hook that up. Park cable, we hook that up there, and if we have a third connection we'd like to run through all our TVs, we can hook that up right there. We have our quick connect right here for our blue coiled hose. We can hook up a spray port there. This coax port on the side here runs directly to our outside TV that we can go ahead and hook whatever we want directly to that as well. We have a switch over here for our front cap lights and our slide lights. And we have another switch up in the top right corner, kind of hard to see. That is our water pump. That 12-volt water pump will pull from our onboard water storage, and it will supply water to our faucets on the inside in the event that we have actual water in that tank. We'll talk about how to fill that in a second. Our other option is our city water connection. Our city water connection is right here. This is where we would hook that water hose up. If we have a bib at the campground, we can hook that water hose up, turn it on. That will supply water to our fixtures. So if you didn't have that, you want to fill your fresh tank and use that water pump. Right here we have the combination of all the different options for how our water can go out into our unit. So we have our dry camping. So this would be if we have already filled our tank, we would go ahead and turn it to here. We turn that water pump on and it will pull from that tank. Next one is our power fill tank. We would have it in this option here to be able to fill that tank through that city water connection there. Now that onboard storage, once you add water to it, that does add more weight to our unit. If we don't want it, there is a valve underneath that we can go ahead and pull that and drain that water out. We don't want any more than what we need because of the added extra weight, and we don't want to leave it in there too long because that water will become stagnant over time. If we have a city water connection at the campsite, we can go ahead and hook that hose up right here, turn it to this configuration, and then we have our city water directly out to all of our stuff. Winterization option would pull from right here into our unit, and that end of that hose would need to go into a bottle of RV antifreeze. This is to be able to winterize your unit. There are more steps to this process. You can find that in your owner's manual or in our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks. Our last one is siphon sanitize to tank, which would be this configuration here. That is to sanitize that onboard water storage tank. You could do a mixture of bleach and water into that tank to go ahead and sanitize it and clean it out. Our next option over here is our black tank flush. That is to go ahead and flush out that sewage system out of our black tank. We would hook that up. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to our tank system. We do have a gray tank valve right here for that secondary gray tank outlet over here. Once again, we will go over the gray and black tanks when we get to those outlets. And we have a GFCI protected outlet right here on the side. We'll see we have our gray tank and black tank valves right below it. One more thing in our compartment right here, we do have that Lippert tire link system. That monitor is already in there. We have our sensors on our tires to be able to monitor our tire pressure and everything while we're traveling down the road. Behind me we have our tankless Furrion water heater. That is going to be 12-volt powered as well as propane in order to heat the water in our system. And then we have our Dometic furnace right here. Once again, 12 volts, propane to heat the air. Our 50 amp service twist lock plug right here. Pretty easy. We just plug it in, turn it to the right to lock it in. We also have that little retainer ring on there. We want to go ahead and tighten that up, reduce the risk for that plug of being pulled out. Whenever we go to use or plug in our power rather, we want to go ahead and plug it in here first, then plug it in at our service station. That's to reduce any arcing on our plug right here. We also want to make sure that our AC units are off so we don't have any surges on that system. Just before our slide out, we do have our output for our sewer system, and behind that you're going to see a red and blue line. That red and blue line is for the low point drains for your winterization. you want more information on that, there it is in the owner's manual, or you can find our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks, but that's where we're going to drain the water out of our system. Here's where we're going to dump our tanks. We go ahead and pull that cover off, hook our 4-inch hose up, and run it over to our dump station. Now, if you have a dump station where you're at, you can leave your gray tanks open all the time, which is your 2 valves in that control center. Your gray tanks is just shower and sink water, no debris really or anything like that. Just let it drain out so you don't have to come out here and keep dumping it. Your black tank system, however, that valve needs to stay closed until you're ready to dump. That's coming from your toilet, that's sewer, toilet paper, all that stuff. We want to make sure we leave that valve closed so water stays in that system and nothing in there solidifies and dries up to where you can't get it out. So the procedure for dumping that is we're ready to dump. We go over, we pull our black tank valve, we go ahead and start emptying out the system. You have your black tank flush in that control center. We hook a water hose up to it, turn it on. That is going to send water to a spray port on the other side of this tank and help push that debris down to this valve and flush out your system. Once you're satisfied, turn your black tank flush off, come over here, close your valve, and then you're going to go on the inside to your toilet, hold that pedal down, and put several gallons of fresh, clean water in there. Want to do that to make sure any debris that's left in that system will kind of get washed down while you're traveling down the road, but also so it doesn't solidify in there. You'll still have some little debris in there. It's going to happen. And then we also want to put our chemicals in there. That way that debris will actually deteriorate with the chemicals. From there, pretty much it. We do have more information on black tank flush and some other ways to do it. In our HAP's Helpful Hacks section. This is how the owner's manual is going to tell you to do it. We've got some pro tips in that HAP's Helpful Hacks section. Our slide out is going to be 12-volt powered. You have a motor that's in the underbelly right there. You can't see it. If in the event that slide out goes out, you do have an override on the other side. There's going to be a hole in the J-wrap, and there'll be a little pin sticking out of the frame. You put your crank handle on there and manually crank that slide out to get you out of a jam. On the back corner of our unit, we do have another gray tank valve right there. You'll have to go ahead and get a second hose and have a Y pipe to be able to connect to the one in the front for all that to go to a single port if you wish. That valve to dump it is right there. It's going to operate the same as that front gray tank. Now, under our unit, behind our axle, we'll notice that white valve with the 2 blue hoses next to it. That white valve is to drain out our fresh tank system if we want to dump that out. The blue hoses are overflows for that system in the event you put too much water in it. On the back of our unit, we are pre-wired for that Furon backup camera system. If you want to upgrade it, whenever we turn our running lights on, it will power up that camera system we can see behind us while we're traveling down the road or backing up. Down at the bottom, we have our receiver hitch to pull a trailer. We have our 4-way plug right there. It does have a weight rating on that system. Make sure you're following it properly. We have our quick connect spray port right here. We want to take that blue coiled hose from the back, stick it back here. We can have a little spray port wash station right there. We're also going to have our factory supply ladder to be able to gain access to our roof. Now, why do we want to do that? Well, it's the most important thing. We need to check our sealants on our roof every 60 to 90 days, as well as the sealant around all of our trims, our lights, our windows, all that stuff, and maintain that sealant. It's the most #1 neglected thing when it comes to campers. I don't care if you have it under a cover or not, check that sealant. We want to go ahead and check for any cracking, peeling, deterioration, anything like that that can allow water entry into our unit and end up rotting it out. We don't want that, so make sure we're staying on top of that sealant and taking care of it. We also need to get up there after trips and make sure no low-lying tree limbs or anything poked any holes in our rubber, and we also want to make sure we're cleaning that rubber on the roof at least twice a year. On the passenger side of our unit, we have an LP tank in that first compartment like we talked about, the dual propane tanks. We have our pass-through bay storage right there, and then we have our awning right behind me. Our awning is 12-volt powered as well as our lights, and our awning is mainly just a sunshade, all right? It's not meant to protect us under heavy rains, anything like that, high winds, stuff like that. You need to go ahead and roll that awning in. Bad storm coming in, roll it in. Better safe than sorry, because I promise you don't want that insurance claim. Whenever we do run our awning out and use it, we might get a little light dew, a little bit of light rain, maybe some AC condensation runoff on there from your roof. We want to make sure that we are leaning our awning to the front or the rear. In order to do that, it's real easy. We're going to grab our arm right here, and then we just pull it down. It's the same thing on the other side. You just choose which one you want to pitch down. To put it back, push it up, and now we can roll our awning in. Make sure we're caring for that and we don't end up with that kind of repair. I promise you, you don't want it. Moving down the line, up above, you're going to see that black vent right there. It has 2 tabs on it. You want to make sure that those are open if you want to use the hood range vent in your kitchen so that air will ventilate out. If you want to close them during storage so no insects can build any nests, you can do that. Down here we have our cable as well as satellite hookup and our 110 outlet for our outdoor TV. The outlets outside and in your kitchen and bathroom are all going to be GFCI protected. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the breaker on the inside that controls that. Before I forget, we're going to talk about the little hole down in the bottom of the J-wrap right here. That is your override for that slide on the opposite side. You're going to have one more right here that's a little bit lower. That is going to be for your spare tire. So on the other side of that J-wrap, you're going to see a little post sticking out of your frame. That's what those posts are for. In our front compartment right here, we have our 110 dorm refrigerator. That is going to be powered up every time you plug it in. So that means that the fridge is going to cool and the freezer is going to freeze, right? So when we unplug it, that means it's all going to defrost. We need to make sure that we clean this fridge out, get the water out of it, wipe it down, air it out, dry it out. Otherwise, when you store it and you leave water in that system, it's going to leak out and it's going to damage the wood components around it. Manufacturers aren't going to participate in that kind of repair, so make sure we're maintaining that properly. Behind that, we have our little griddle right here. It has a little latch on it. We're going to flip that up, pull it out to be able to cook. We have our little LP line right here. We're going to feed through the hole on the back, and you're going to notice a quick connect down at the bottom below our J-wrap. That quick connect has a little valve on it. We want to make sure that valve is off. We hook our quick connect up and then you turn it back on for flow. Same thing when we go to disconnect it. When we're ready to store it, we'll go ahead and push it back in. And we have a little travel latch we want to make sure we put down as well so it's not bouncing around there in the back. Our entry door is going to have some resistance when we open and close it. That's our friction controlled hinges right here. Help reduce the risk for wind or kids to be slamming that door, and we want to make sure it doesn't bang up on our awning or slam against the frame. Now the thing about our solid steps is we want to make sure we have clearance. So in this case, we need to go ahead and close the awning before we try to put those steps up. So we're going to do that right now. So we closed our awning so we can open our door all the way. Reason being is when we go to store our steps or pull them out, you have these little brackets right here on the side that can tear up that door. So we want to make sure that we have it open all the way. When we put our steps up, guide them up into the frame, make sure that it is latched in properly, and you can hit the road. When we're ready to pull them out, pull that blue latch right there, and we pull them out. Now, we want to auto level our unit first, then we want to come over here and level our steps next. In order to do that, we have these silver tabs right here. We can just push them in, and our legs will come in and out. So we lay our steps down like this, we find the appropriate level, we push that tab in, and we adjust our legs appropriately to be able to keep them leveled out. We do that for 2 reasons. Make sure we have a good clean flush threshold right here to make that door open and close properly and not leave any gaps. And we also do it so we don't have any contact with the frame of the steps with the frame of the bottom of the door. Right when we walk in our door, if we open up that cabinet right in front of us, we're going to see our control center. This is going to tell you all of your tank levels and operate a bunch of your items on here. We can Bluetooth connect our control center to our phone if we download that Compass Connect app, and we can download it and operate some of the functions on here. But here we'll have our fresh tank, black tank, gray tank levels, as well as our battery level. Down below we'll have our lights for our ceiling, awning, and porch, and our tank heaters. Our tank heaters are a 12-volt mat that is going to heat our tanks, keep them from freezing up in extreme cold weather. We also have our 12-volt water pump right here that is going to pull the water from that fresh tank system. Now this is going to be an on-demand pump. Whenever you have it on, you're going to hear it vibrating down there more than likely and expelling water to our fixtures. Because there's an on-demand pump, it should shut off whenever you have all of your fixtures off. If you hear it continuously running, you're sure you have all your water off. We want to make sure that our fresh tank isn't empty because it'll burn up that pump. And if it isn't empty, then we probably have a leak in our system. We need to turn that off and investigate. If you have a city water connection, no need to have that water pump on. You want to go ahead and just leave it shut off. Below that, we have our awning and our slide out controls down there, and all of this stuff is 12-volt powered. So we got any issues, we want to investigate our 12-volt system. Down below our control center, we're going to see our max air vent control. That's going to control this fantastic fan in here. We have our 4 speeds for our fan, our off button, our vent open and close, pretty simple to use. We have our Furrion thermostat that's going to control the rear AC as well as heat for our entire unit. We're going to go over the operation of that right now. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We of course set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point, and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point, and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that, but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. Now below our dinette booth, we're going to notice behind this panel is going to be our 12-volt blade fuses for all our 12-volt components, and our 110 breakers behind this one. Both are going to be labeled so we can see what they are operating. We'll notice all the way to the right there we have our 110 breaker for our GFCI. That is going to control all of our wet location outlets that say GFCI protected. If they aren't working, we'll come over here and reset this breaker right here, just flipping it all the way down and back up. Now this generally happens because we have too many coffee makers, griddles, blow dryers, stuff like that plugged in and in operation. And if it trips automatically right off the bat, we need to just go unplug some of those items and try to reset it. It can also happen because an outlet got wet as well, so you might want to check for that too. To the left of our entry door, we have our LP detector. This is going to let us know if we have any LP leaks in our unit and alarm us to go ahead and get out. Now it's suggested you go ahead and get your LP system checked once a year to drop test and make sure that there's no leaks throughout your system. This is just going to alarm you if it smells any of the gas. Now on here you'll have the little green light that lets you know that it's powered up. This is hardwired into your battery system, so it's going to be on all the time. You need to test that audible alarm once a month or every time you go camping to make sure it works. We need to know it does have an expiration date on it, either on the front or the back of that unit. We need to change it out when that time comes around. We're also going to have a CO and a smoke detector mounted in our ceilings powered by a 9-volt battery. You check the alarms and the batteries on that so we can make sure we're staying safe. For our dinette booth, we do have a telescopic table that can adjust in height a little bit if we wish to do that. We have our recliner couch right here. We pull that cable, it'll kick back, and we have lights, massaging, and heated seats as well. For our entertainment, of course, we have our TV. At all of your TV locations, you're going to have a coax plate that says antenna and satellite. Behind this particular one in our living room, you're going to see a plate that has a red button and a red light on it. This will control the antenna boost for all your locations. That red light indicates the antenna boost is on. It's going to help you pick up more channels in that area. So we want to make sure that's on when we're scanning for those antenna channels. If we're scanning for cable channels, however, we need to make sure that light is off. So we just hit that button again and that light will turn off so we don't scramble the channels whenever we're scanning for cable. So antenna light on when we're scanning for antenna, light off for cable. Down here we have our 110 fireplace. We'll go over more information on that right now. Here we have our fireplace. We have a sensor right up here in the top right. We have to aim that remote at to turn it on. We have our Celsius and Fahrenheit temperature we can change to, And right here, this little flame icon is going to change the dimness of our flame. If we want to change the lighting of our flame, we hit the light bulb on the screen down here at the bottom, and it'll give you some different options right there. If we want to operate our heater on a timer, once again, electric heater, it is going to be this button right here. It looks like a clock, and when we push it, we can see some times pop up: 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, all the way up to 8, and then it will go to 0 hours, letting you know that that timer is off. If we want to change our temperature, we'll use one of these two buttons at the bottom, and we can see once again we have a temperature down there, and we will go ahead and raise it until it kicks on, or lower it, we want it to kick off, or we can keep going until it says on, and that heater will stay running all the time. We kick it up one more time, and it's going to say OF, meaning that that system is off. In our kitchen, we have our 110 microwave with a vent fan in there. That's going to be for that vent on the outside to ventilate out. We need to make sure it's open in order to operate. We have our 3-burner stove right here by Furrion, and oven. We have our glass cooktop to give us more counter space. This is also how it needs to be whenever we are in travel. Flip it up when we're ready to cook, and we have our 3 burners right here. We need to make sure, of course, our propane is on. We pick our designated burner, turn it to the flame icon, manually crank it until it lights. Now, a common issue with propane is you end up with air in the system. This can happen if you change your tanks out, or if when you store your unit, you leave your tanks off for a period of time, you'll end up with air in that system. Really easy issues to remediate. All we have to do is make sure we turn on our tanks. We come over here and we light the stove. Now, it can take a little bit of time for that propane to travel here and the air escape, but we just keep cranking on there until it lights. Once it lights, let it run for about 30 to 60 seconds, and more than likely you've gotten most, if not all, the air out of that system. We want to do that before we operate appliances like our water heater or our furnace, because those things can go into a fault if we try to operate them first and there's just air pushing through there. It won't light. You're going to have to cycle it again, all that stuff. So just come over here, bleed the stove out. Once you've done it once, you won't have to do it again unless you change your tanks out or shut that system down. Below that is our oven. This one's still going to be a little bit more difficult even after you bleed it out. We would go ahead and turn this knob. We turn it to the flame icon, same thing. Crank it until it lights down at the bottom, and that's going to be your pilot. We let that pilot run for about 30 seconds or so, and then we can let off that knob. During the entire time you're trying to light it, and once it lit, you need to have that knob down. Once it lit, like I said, turn to your desired temperature. We should see that burner tube light up. If it doesn't, go back and restart from the beginning. Now, it's going to take a little bit longer, like I said, the first time after you bleed air out, because the orifice in there is smaller. It's still going to have a little air trapped in there. But once you do it that first time, until you, of course, end up with air in your line again, it should light up pretty easy. We have our 12-volt Furrion fridge and freezer in the fridge area. You're going to see a knob up here on top that will go from off to cold to colder, and then we also have that off-grid option. Off-grid option is going to reduce the amount of work that our compressor is doing if we're trying to conserve our 12-volt energy. Maybe we don't have shore power, working off of solar, boondocking, whatever the case. We can turn it to off-grid and it will use less energy. Now, it does this, but we need to keep in mind that it is also counting on us not to open and close that fridge too much. So don't do that, otherwise your items really aren't going to stay that cold. In our freezer area, pretty simple, but main thing about both of these is they don't have a drain hose. We want to make sure whenever we store our unit, we turn this system off, whatever the case may be, this stuff's going to defrost just like our outside one. So make sure we're wiping all that stuff out in the fridge and the freezer, getting the water out, let it air out, reduce the risk for mold and mildew. Otherwise, if there is water left in here, it will drain out and damage our wood components around our unit. And we need to make sure we don't do that because manufacturers aren't going to cover that kind of item. Here we are in our bathroom. In our shower, we have our standard hot-cold faucet as well as an on-off button on the shower head. That's generally used whenever you don't have a dump station or you don't have city water. You're trying to conserve the amount of water you put into your gray tank as well as the amount of water you use out of your fresh tank system. So it's just an easier way to turn that water off and on in between showering off and lathering up. We can go ahead and just hit that button up there versus trying to find the sweet spot for the hot water on our faucet. If you want to use it, you can. If you don't have to. You have that dump station in city water, you don't need to. Beyond that, we do have a vent up in the ceiling with a fan on it. When you flip that switch right there, kick our 12-volt fan on. We want to emit any humidity and stuff out of here to help reduce the risk for mold and mildew in this bathroom. Our toilet right here, pretty standard. We have a valve there. We're going to push it to go ahead and flush anything down. Only things we're putting in there is number 1, which is your liquids, right? We put that in there. We can just hit the pedal and flush. Number 2, which is your solids. We want to make sure we fill that bowl about 1/2 to 3/4 of the way with water, so we have enough to actually push those solids down to your black tank and not have any clogging in your system. In order to do that, barely push that pedal down right there and water will start coming out into that bowl and we can go ahead and fill it up. Number 3 is going to be RV toilet paper only. We want to make sure we get appropriate toilet paper so it degrades properly in that tank and doesn't cause any clogging whenever you go to flush it out. Last thing is our chemicals. Our chemicals help degrade whatever deposits are in there, and they also make it smell nice. In our bathroom, we also have our Furrion tankless water heater. We'll go over the operation of that right now. In our bathroom, we'll see our Furrion tankless control center. Pretty simple. We have our power on, off and on, kick it on. That's going to be our set point for our water. We can change that by hitting our up and down buttons right there. Our indicators right here, power, Fahrenheit, Celsius. If we want to change one or the other, we hit that bottom right button, and flame. Flame is only going to kick on whenever we turn that hot water on, indicating that system is working. And once again, on demand, it'll only come on whenever we have that hot water on. All right, we're in our bedroom, not much to go over. We do have storage underneath our bed. We do have a TV backer location with our cable and satellite ports. We're also going to have our second AC. Our second thermostat is going to control this AC. It will not have heat on it, and it does not control the rear one, just this one. One in the living room controls our rear and our heat. Now, on both our living room and our bedroom, we're going to see a ceiling assembly in here. If we pull these 2 tabs down, that will gain access to that filter we need to clean out every so often so we're not restricting air to our AC. We also have a vent on here. This is a quick dump vent. If we want to cool off just this area quickly, we want to open that up and we'll have more airflow right here. If we want the air to circulate through our unit and go through our ceiling ducts up there, we need to make sure that it is closed.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us, and keep watching here at Great American RV SuperStores, where we bring the how-to you.